Howdy. Today I'll be talking about saddle training gaited horses. And I'll just use Foxtrotter as an example. I've worked with different gaited horses, and Foxtrotters is definitely the most that the most that I've done of all the gaited horses breeds. But um, yeah, it'll be great. I actually feel like it would be interesting to hear other trainers' feedback on the different gaited horses and how on their approaches to training them. But um, as a saddle, when you're doing the saddle training with the horse, I do an exercise of Clinton Anderson's called Follow the Fence, and something that's really important with all horses is that when you're training and follow the fence, the whole point is to get the horse to go, one direction, and to stay that direction and stay close to the fence. It needs to stop when you tell it to stop. And so you've already taught it to stop, hopefully, from Clinton Anderson's cruising lesson. But, and yeah, just like I've said, I'm not certified by him or anything, but with horses, with colts, when you're starting them, if a horse really resists standing still, it doesn't like to stop and be relaxed, then that can be really difficult, especially if you're like me and you take that as an offense. Like if a horse isn't manifesting relaxation, that means you're probably adding too much pressure. But what I found though is because I'm training horses in a 90-day program, I have to deal with that sometimes. And whereas if I train a horse in a 5-month program, I can avoid that problem entirely. But sometimes during my 90-day program, on the first couple of rides, the horse is really anxious and it doesn't want to stand still and relax. And typically, Clinton Anderson, he says that you should make that horse stand still. Like, you want to always have your turn off button, be able to do your one rein stop and feel safe. But in the 90-day program, you don't have like if you do that, then you're not gonna get as much taught to the horse, because some horses are so anxious that you're gonna have to focus like 5 days in a row on just getting them to stand still. And people don't want their horse to just know how to stand still. They need it to be able to go in all the gates and to turn and everything else. And so as a colt starter, one of the biggest tips I can give is that when you're teaching a horse on the first rides, that you need to go no longer than 5 days on teaching the horse follow the fence, like just going one direction, going in the gates that you want. Because the problem with that exercise, the thing it lacks is it doesn't teach a horse to move its feet in different directions. A horse needs to be taught to move its feet in different directions in order for it to continue to stay submissive, and in order for the horse to think that you are the alpha. If you continue only doing exercises that don't redirect movement, if you continue doing only follow the fence and only the cruising lesson of Clinton Anderson's, where the horse just goes around on a loose rein, then the horse gains an alpha type mentality, and it will be disrespectful to you. And so I like to get that out. I get that out of my horses. Like I get them to be really enjoy being the submissive one in the work during my groundwork before I ever get on them. But even if I do a really good job on the groundwork, it's always possible that the horse is going to start to go back to being more resistant and more alpha and more pushy against you if you don't make it move its feet in different directions. So only stay in the cruising and follow the fence lesson for a maximum of 1 week. Otherwise, the horse will get more aggressive. And so yeah, that applies to all horses, but that knowledge is actually super, super helpful when it comes to gaited horses. So, and I'll explain why. First, I'm going to say something that I love to say to everybody that brings me a gaited horse, and I explain to them how I train them. So, the biggest difference between a gaited horse and a regular horse, like a more regular horse breed that just has 3 gaits or whatever. The most horses, walk, trot, and lope. They also can go backwards and whatever. You can get fancy and say that they have other types of gaits, like the long trot. They have like a creep, or they have, I don't know, like all kinds of different types of movement that they do with their feet. But basically, 3 gaits: walk, trot, and lope. But when you have a gaited horse, they have the walk, trot, and lope, but they have an additional one. So they have the walk, trot, lope, and then they have their gaited, like I just call it their gait. Like for example, with like a foxtrot, it goes like, they have their walk, then they have their trot, then they have their foxtrot, and then they have their lope. And gaits are interesting because sometimes the foxtrot will be slower than the trot, and sometimes the trot will be slower than the foxtrot. And so, because of the 4 gaits that a gaited horse has, I explain this to people as though it has a 4th mind, and like it's a 4th horse. I like to, as a trainer, it's really important that you work in each gait. Like usually it's 3. It's important that you work in each gait the same amount of time. So that, because a horse's muscle memory ties the thought processes to the muscle memory. And so if you only teach a horse to be respectful in the walk, the horse's muscles and its mind haven't learned to be respectful in the trot or the lope. And so when you're teaching a horse a new concept in a day, you need to make sure you're walking, trotting, and loping. If your trainer only lopes, or only does 1 gait, only walks, usually it's they only walk because they're too scared, or not pushing it, like not assertive enough to get any results with the horse, so they just do a walk bareback, or they only lope the horse around, and that's because they don't know how to get a horse to be totally submissive, and they don't know they don't know the mental side of a horse as much as they do the physical side. And so yeah, and that's kind of the opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Like, so either a horse trainer typically is really good at the walking and like mental side of a horse, like they can break down their behavior, like I do, but they lack the ability to get a horse to physically learn things and to excel in physical competition and just professionalism. And that's why Clinton Anderson's method is like gold, because it teaches you both. It gets both done. And so as long as you're soaking up all the mental things that Clinton teaches, his exercises will automatically give you the physical professionalism that you need. But yeah, okay, so back to the four minds, or the 4 horses. So you want to treat them evenly. And this is really hard with a gaited horse. And so with a gaited horse, they don't, it's like probably 65% of gaited horses don't go into their gait in the first 30 rides. Like they don't go into it consistently. So it's a gamble if the horse is actually if you're gonna have to teach the horse to go into its gait, or if it already likes being in its gait. And because there's a gamble there, you want to, as a trainer, be upfront with your clients and say that you don't know how long it's going to take for the horse to be good in the gait. Typically, I'm very good at giving a timeline with with the horse owners, and I can tell them just how long I'm going to be doing each exercise and how long each concept is going to take for a horse to learn it. And but with foxtrotters, I have to tell them that from the beginning, it's kind of a shapeless process, in that like I will switch much more dynamically than I would with a normal horse. My program isn't as structured. One day where I typically would think that I would be teaching the horse to follow the fence, that day I may actually have to start teaching the horse to turn and to do diagonals, one of Clinton Anderson's exercises. And yeah, so let's get into the reason, like, why is it that sometimes with a foxtrotter, or like with a gaited horse, they're harder to read. The reason is because that missing gait. So like typically, like 65% of the time, the horse only goes in the walk, trot, and lope, and they don't go into their foxtrot or to their gait, their special gait. And so, um, that missing part can create a big chasm in their learning if it's not ever used. And so, and that missing part, like the horse is aware that you're not making it use its athletic ability. Like, so like, just like how like a kid that is only allowed to walk around in a building, if you only let that kid walk, for like a week or whatever, I don't know, it takes way shorter than a week. For a day, if you only let a kid walk in a day, then the kid's gonna have a fit, and the kid's gonna feel pressure because he only got to walk and he didn't get to jog and he didn't get to run. He didn't get to do all of his normal body movements. His brain is actually like degrading in value. And so we as humans, and also horses, they just start to feel pressure. They feel upset. And when they don't get to move the way that they normally get to move. So in the training process, if you're saddle training and you can tell that the horse is getting irritated because it doesn't get the movement like it typically does, because you're making it do a new movement where, like, for example, if it likes to do its gait, but you're making it trot, or the other way around, you're making it do it gait. You're making the horse do the gait instead of the trot. Then the horse will start to feel pressure. It'll start to be annoyed. And so because of that annoyance, you need to move on to something else. Like you don't want to have a horse annoyed the whole time you're training it. So that's what I do. Like I teach my horses to enjoy the whole learning process. So they don't, and so if I see one that has, if I see that a problem is so difficult that the horse is going to be getting annoyed consistently, then I'm going to address that problem another day. I'm not going to, it's not worth it for me to have a horse learn a negative thought process behavior of being anxious or pushy or anything, like if I can avoid it. And so horses have, 3 minds, I like to say, but foxtrotters and gaited horses, they have 4. And so it takes so much more time to train 4 minds than it does 3. Just like how solving a math equation that has 3 variables takes like so much more time than solving a math equation that only has 2. That same just immense difference, like the jump of effort it takes to solve a problem that only has 2 variables to 3. That same jump happens when you take a horse that has 3 gaits into 4. You're going from 3 variables to 4 variables. So now you're making it a really difficult problem to solve all the variables for. So now specifically with foxtrotters and with gaited horses, I do, instead of only 12 rides before a trail ride, I do 24 rides. And that's because of this whole anxious problem. I want to make sure that the horse is comfortable and understands all the cues, understands where the release of pressure comes from before I take it on a ride. And it's difficult to do that in only 12 rides with a gaited horse because they feel more anxiety from that extra movement that they aren't doing. And so then I don't focus. So after the 24 rides, I'll take them on trail rides, like say about 30 trail rides. And then after the 30 trail rides, that's when I bring them back and I'll touch back up on the things I taught them in the arena: turning, yielding, backing up. And that's when I'm going to start teaching them to go into their gait. And so that's everything that I have on foxtrotters and gaited horses. So if anybody has any other additional tips that really help on their training process, I'd love to hear it and be able to compare it to how I do it, and just really get to understand them more. Like I said, the difference from having 3 gaits to 4 is huge, and I don't think I've understood it all yet. And so I hope that this helps you guys, and have a good one.